to the latest speaker series. Good to have you here. Good to see some familiar faces, some new faces, but some people I haven't seen in a while, which is really good. It's nice to catch up, which is why this networking time is probably so important. You know, we're a big city, but we're a pretty small community, so it's kind of good to know where we're all at. Very excited to have the opportunity to have you join us today. Remember that our studios, you came by them, they're right up there by TSA. We do 8 or 9 of these events per year, and the speaker series events have been going annually since 2004. When I say that, I can't believe that we've been here that long. The Fall Business Sports Luncheon will be very soon here, November 11th, and that's going to conclude this year's set of speakers. There's a QR code on all of your tables right there, and that is so that you can get the digital version of what takes place today afterwards, and a takeaway button at the bottom of the digital program that gives you our event survey. There's also a printed one on your spot there so that you can fill it out. That's how we continually improve, we hope, and if we don't, you'll let us know. These events don't happen without sponsors, obviously. We always like to applaud them. Dean Transportation, thank you. Shaheen Chevrolet and Cadillac, I saw you guys. When are you going to bring a car out here sometime? Yeah. Oh, look at that. Okay, good. Fly Lansing, Capital Region International Airport. Always love their support. Sinair. Mike, where are you at? Raise your hand. Oh, you got a table today. Oh, you brought staff. Look at that. Thanks for your support as always, and of course, LaughQ. Is there anyone here from LaughQ? Okay. No financial report. Now we're going to go around the room and do our community roundtable. So let's start with Jason from Shaheen Chevrolet and Cadillac.
Thank you, Chris. Jason with Shaheen Chevrolet and Cadillac. I've got Juan, my facilities manager, my brother Jeff, new car director, been with me forever. And
yeah, literally.
Yeah, my whole life. Thanks, Chris. But a couple things going on at our facilities. If you're needing tires coming into the winter, I think I mentioned this last time, but buy 3, get 1 for $1. It truly is a great deal. It goes until November 27th. And we do tire match guarantee also. So we shop the tires out with the best price, and then you get the 4th one for $1. So it's a good deal. GM helps us with that. And that's right at our Quick Lube and Tire Center. It's an 8-bay Quick Lube and Tire Center. And also, if you're remotely interested in an EV, times, it seemed like the end of last month was like, hey, 7,500 going away, but GM gave us these little tags that we put on cars to extend the $7,500 for leasing. And we've got these cars tagged, and like an EV Equinox, you can run for $300 a month. So, thinking about something like that, it does expire at the end of the month, but thank you.
Is that kind of like post-dating a check?
Exactly.
Okay. Like that. Okay. And now for Dean Transportation, Taylor, what's up?
Hi everyone, I'm Taylor Williams, the communication supervisor for Dean. I'm sure you've been seeing our buses on the road since August, and it's crazy, it's already the middle of October. Speaking of that, next week is National School Bus Safety Week, so our social media is going to be full of safety tips and other content that can be shared. And our sister company, Dean Trailways, don't forget about us for your holiday parties or any big holiday travel destination trips you have planned.
I'll tell you what else, the black car is unbelievable. Just used it last week. It really
They'll bring you here.
Saves all kinds of things. Mike Witt, Sinair.
Morning, maybe afternoon, still morning. Mike Witt with Sinair. We're an affordable housing financial institution here in Lansing. A lot of the work that we do is with the federal government, so like many of you, we're waiting to see when they're going to reopen and what that looks like when they do reopen. But we are still getting work done. In the meantime, we're working on a new investment fund, which will close probably in November, maybe early December, but it'll like $150 million of investment with our investors to provide affordable housing in our footprint. A lot of it is in Michigan, and we also are in the kind of Great Lakes states and Mid-Atlantic. A couple that we have closed recently have just opened. Chris was actually at one of our grand openings in Jackson. You might have seen it on the news. I think Channel 10 was actually there. It is a housing project for folks who are dealing with opioid addiction. So they come out of the drug courts and it gives them a place to live, and it's for that. And we actually just closed and broke ground on a similar facility in Southfield where we're going to do the same thing. So the one in Jackson, we've now got 80 units or so, and the one in Southfield is going to be number 72. So just some cool work that we're doing.
Yeah. It's still up.
It was already built, yeah.
I was going to say, that no matter how hard and no matter how much money and how many good, we never meet the need.
Yeah, great stories by the folks that live there too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Okay, so because I don't want to appear on the 6 o'clock in an unfavorable circumstance, I'm going to have Deb Peter Smart stand up and bring us up to date on Channel 10.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for the invite today. Hi, everybody. I'm Deb Petersmark. I'm the general manager at WILX. I just celebrated my 25th anniversary with the station.
Wow.
I do have a couple super exciting updates. Some of you may have heard that our company, Gray Media, has entered into an agreement to purchase WSYM Fox 47. We're just waiting for that to go through regulatory approval, expecting that to close probably around January 1st. So we're really excited to bring those two teams together, which leads me to the second update, which we are super excited about. I called the mayor last week and announced to him that we are expanding our station and staying where we are in Lansing, which is awesome. We're on the south side, right next door to Jason. So we're adding about 17,000 square feet, and then we're remodeling the rest of the station, so ending up with about 35,000 square feet in order to accommodate the additional people, and just for the fact that we are desperately too small. Really excited to be working with Granger Construction locally and Bergman Architects, so I'm really happy to have those partnerships. And then on the fun side, if any of you know David Andrews, our main anchor, we are getting ready to publish Baking News, which is David's cookbook that will be for sale in time for Christmas. So $20 at Bestsellers in Mason, or we'll be selling them online too. So if you follow him on Facebook, he is an amazing baker. It is like crazy. So it's really going to be more of like a coffee table book because the pictures are so awesome. So yeah, so look for that. So thanks.
Just in time for Christmas.
Yeah, thanks for the chance.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Appreciate the job you do at Channel 10 too. Okay, so now we're going to break for lunch, but the purpose of this whole speaker series was really to bring outside perspectives and different information. And as you'll find out in today's presentation, there's always a story behind the story that makes it more sensible. And don't be afraid of the Q&A. Start thinking of your questions now, because this guy is on the hill almost every day. So get your lunch, come back, and we'll hear from Todd McCracken as soon as we are done eating. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Did everybody enjoy the lunch? Yeah. Good. Not too heavy. I love that. Okay, along those lines, I'm glad you enjoyed your lunch. Now we're going to hear from our speaker. And Allison Scott, thank you so much for being here from Sensei. That Rick Snyder, of course, is one of the founders of that, owners. And he's going to be here in March, I think. Is that right? Yeah. So you want to put that on your agenda as well. I have known Todd for more years than I'm going to stay up here, and had the good fortune of being chairman of his board. Everybody on the Capitol Hill knows this guy, and they cherish his opinion. They love to hear from him, and he is in fact the voice of small business. And the job that he does on our behalf that sometimes we don't even know is getting done. I remember one instance where we had to separate a rider out of a bill, and it was going to be devastating for small business. And I came back and I told everybody about it, and nobody knew anything about it. But the point is, that's where NSBA catches the problems. And the fact that he knows most everything that is going on the Capitol Hill is why we have him back every year to update us on that sort of thing. And we're going to make an extended question and answer period too, so start thinking about that. So with that, I would tell you one of my most honorable, honest, and non-political friends. This day that's cherished. Todd McCracken.
Thanks, Chris. It's always great to be back here. Thanks for inviting me. As I'm sure all the work we've done together for the years. So it's always good to be back here. I'm a little introducing to somebody who knows everything happening up the hill. I'm not sure that's a fair assessment. I don't think anybody knows everything that's happening up that place. But I'll try to do my best. We work on, things that affect small companies, right? So we're trying to make sure that day in, day out, the things that Congress does are helpful. Making sure that the things that regulators do don't hurt too bad. And try to keep them focused on what really matters to small business. Because, we have the sort of enviable position of representing a positive constituency, right? Everybody wants to be a friend of small business. But what that winds up doing is some, big interest occasionally want to meet their issues as opposed to small business. They have a lot of spots, print ads, and so on and so forth, trying to convince everybody that their issue is a key small business issue. We've got to say, hold on, that might be fine, but is that really the small business priority? So we're always trying to remind people what the real small business priorities are. So that's one of the downsides of this podcast. But yeah, we've been around for 90 years, in just a couple of years as an association. We're the oldest national small business group in the country. We were founded during the Great Depression by a printer in Akron, Ohio. We've been doing this work ever since. They moved the offices to DC in the 40s. I've been there now over 30 years. I won't say how many, more than 30 years. But I've been doing this small business representation for a very long time. And it's really rewarding work because I really do believe that small business is what makes this country tick. It's what makes us exceptional in the world. So it feels really good to get up every day and know that what you're working on, as frustrating as it can be sometimes, is helping your constituency. It's the most important one, I think, for this nation's economic and even its civic health. So it's really nice this year. We've had a pretty good degree of success. We've gotten a lot of things done. You may have all known that this bill passed, the President named the big, beautiful bill. It does a lot of stuff, and we kept our focus on what matters in that bill to the small business community. And we got just about everything we wanted in the implemented. So as you probably all know, the tax provisions that help pass through entities were set to expire this year. The corporate tax rates that passed 2 years ago were permanent. No action was needed in corporate tax rates in place. But if you're a pass-through entity, S-Corp, LC, partnership, etc., both your tax reduction and your deduction were going to expire at the end of this year. There's a huge tax increase on the vast majority of the small business community. So that was priority one, to make sure that didn't happen. And we succeeded. We got not only did we get the rates extended and got the deduction extended, they were made permanent. Which, if I had stood here, maybe I did stand here last fall and talked about what's going to happen with this bill, I wouldn't have dreamed that we would make that permanent. I thought the best thing we could hope for, if we got them extended at all, would be get them extended another 5 or 8 years. But the fact that they're now permanent in the code, just like the corporate rates, is a significant victory. That I don't know that people would conceive what a big deal that is, because it's huge. The other thing we worked on was in that package was R&D. In 2017, they changed the rules for how you can deduct research and development expenses. So they used to be able to deduct them entirely in the year that you accrued the expense. And they changed it so that you can only amortize it 20% a year. So 20% this year, to next year, until it's all done. Well, that was a huge hit on small companies because that's a big cash flow problem. And they did that to pay for the other tax cuts that were in that bill years ago. So we succeeded in getting that reverted back to the way it was before 2017, which also is, especially for companies that do any level of research and development. It's just a watershed thing, especially for the smallest companies. And then finally, an issue that people don't talk about much anymore because it's the estate tax. Family businesses have had a relatively significant exemption. The estate tax doesn't kick in now until you have a reasonably significant business. But those exemption levels, people keep reading, were temporary. They're going to expire at the end of 25, and suddenly a whole bunch of family businesses that hadn't been worried about estate planning and how am I going to pay the estate tax, are suddenly going to be thrown right in the middle of that again in 2026. We got that exemption level kept at a relatively high level, so the vast majority of small family businesses don't have to worry about the estate tax. So those are all, I think, very significant victories that are really meaningful for the small business community moving forward. There are top priorities put on by our membership coming into this year, and we're really glad that they passed. A couple of the things that happened this year too. Well, I think last year when I came in, last couple of times I talked about this thing called the Corporate Transparency Act. And when I first started talking about the coming reporting under the Corporate Transparency Act 2 or 3 years ago, I mostly got blank looks. People were like, what are you talking about? I never heard of this thing. And gradually, as the enforcement date got closer and closer, people started to realize what this was and how problematic it potentially could be, depending on your ownership structure, especially, to do some of this reporting. And more importantly, keep it up to date. And worry about what the penalties were going to be if you didn't keep it up to date in a timely way. Well, our association, we took the lead and filed a lawsuit because we thought the law was unconstitutional in the way it was structured, and we won. That brought a lot of attention to the issue. There were several other lawsuits that were then brought by other organizations after that. It also brought attention to on the congressional and administrative side to deal with this. So of course, we have to. Our lawsuit is actually still in the appeals process. Well, we won, the government appealed, and it's still sitting at the circuit court level. But in the meantime, because of all that activity in our messaging, the administration earlier this year issued an executive order basically saying they're basically not going to enforce the CTA as a resident original written. That only foreign companies, not domestic companies, can actually do that level of reporting. So that's, again, a huge victory. So now, not just the companies that are part of our association, that are part of our exemption because of our lawsuit are exempt. All small companies are now exempt from having to do that reporting of the Corporate Transparency Act. The problem, I think we're working on now, is, of course, it was all done through executive order. And executive orders are now permanent. Another president could come in. This president could change his mind next year and say, we don't want to have a new executive order. So what we're working on now is to pass a law that codifies that executive order, so it's in the law in perpetuity. And we have some specific language shopping around the Congress, and I think we'll have a bill this year. We'll begin to see if we can get it passed next year. So that's sort of what's happened. I think the good news is happening. We have a few more things coming up this year we have to work on. Tariffs are a significant issue for many of our small companies, and so we've been trying to call attention to that. They're called specifically for an exemption for small companies, specifically for the tariffs, because again, it's a cash flow issue for so many companies, as I'm sure you all know. So many companies, they've got to pay the tariff as soon as the product comes into our country, and then it could be days, weeks, months before they actually going to sell the product and make a profit. So it's a significant cash flow burden for those small companies that don't have adequate access to capital. Being larger companies can handle it much better than small companies can. And there's a bunch of, for companies that do government contracting, there's a big rewrite of the federal acquisition rules. If you do federal contracting, watch this space, because virtually the entire rules around how companies contract with the federal government are being rewritten as we speak. It's coming out in bits and pieces, and it's going to happen over the next few months. So we're going to be deeply involved in that to make sure that small companies are treated fairly in that process. The other thing that's a little bit smaller program, so it may matter to some of you, in the overall economic scheme is very important. Only a few companies are directly involved. There's a program called the Small Business Innovator Research Program, or SBI. And we were one of the organizations that got this thing passed in the first place back in 1980. I was there in 1980. Our association was. And what it does, I mean, for years, the federal government has a very significant research budget. And virtually all of that research money went to universities and big companies. And that was pretty much it. And so, whereas we're sitting on the small business community that actually is the most innovative part of our entire economy, and many of them are very well situated to do some of this research and then commercialize it after the fact. But we're largely cut out of the process because they didn't have the inside track with some of these deals. So what the SBIR does is requires agencies to set aside 3%, just 3%, but 3% of their federal R&D internal research budget for small companies. And then there are the add-on programs that help those companies commercialize that and further research. So it's not additional spending, it's tells the agency how to allocate their spending, make sure that small companies are part of that overall pool. Well, the authorization for that program expired on September 30th. So we're trying to get that reauthorized, at least temporarily. The problem is venture capitalists aren't allowed to own companies that get these grants. So there's some companies that the venture capitalists want to invest in and or buy that are part of the SBIR program. So they're trying to make significant changes that we think will damage that program so that they can buy some of these companies. And our thinking that's not keeping worthwhile that's there in the first place. That's the fight, the behind-the-scene fight that's happening there. So I think that's going to be a significant battle for a few months. You've heard about those kinds of things. But the thing that's in the news now, of course, is the shutdown. As you know, the federal government's not operating. That's not good for small companies in general. If you're got to an SBA loan, that might not happen. If you have a government contract, you're not going to get paid for the future, maybe not get paid at all, depending on what kind of work you do. If you're in any sector that's close to a federal facility, whether it's a national park or a research lab, and have some business, even not directly with that facility, but with customers who do, then it's going to hurt you as well. And all kinds of other ancillary problems that go along very long ways. So we're trying to help as best we can sort of in the shutdown. The problem is the dynamic is not about small business at all. We're bystander to that overall fight. And of course, what's happening is the two sides are trying to get political leverage over each other. The Republicans want to hurry up and sort of pass a so-called continuing resolution to keep the government open for a while without making any big changes. And then they'll get to dealing with this healthcare issue that the Democrats have raised later on. The Democrats, on the other hand, want to deal with that now so that the Republicans will get all the credit for dealing with that issue when it comes up in the fall. So they decided to make an issue of the government funding and not move forward until Americans are sure they'll have those health insurance tax breaks going forward. So that's what's happening. And there's no immediate negotiations happening. I don't expect the government's going to this week, probably not next. Breakthrough could happen at any time, of course. But as far as I know, there are not consequential negotiations happening with any of this. There may be a little bit of senator discussion happening, but there's not real negotiation to a breakthrough, I think, in the region. And that can happen at any time. Once a certain number of politicians, and you're trying to get to 60 votes in the Senate, right? So once you get critical mass, which can happen when a handful of senators are going to take out political pressure and feel the need to do something, suddenly the dam can break. That's what eventually I think will happen in this, but it's anyone's guess when that actually does happen. But I think it will, and they'll probably reopen the government and have some agreement on the healthcare stuff alongside it, would be my prediction, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But we shall see. My predictions on that part have been wrong before, so don't take that to the bank. But once you get done with that, in all candor, the reason they're even having this fight is because their attention is already totally turned to the 2026 elections. And that's really ultimately what this is about, is the next election cycle. And when they get to that point, when they're only thinking of the next election cycle, not much else is going to happen. So we're probably not going to see consequential actions on the rest of our agenda items until 2027. I mean, there's another election, a new Congress is coming to town, and all of this starts all over again. So that's where we are. I think I'm talking almost exclusively about Congress. So I'll turn my attention a little bit now to the agencies, because Congress is the only place things happen, as you know. So over the last few years, we've had to worry about potential outlawing of non-disclosure agreements with employees and non-compete agreements with employees, and independent contractor rules, and a bunch of stuff that we were worried about that are now almost all on the back burner. So there's been, I think, some significant changes in the regulatory environment, which are probably good for small companies for the most part. And the other thing I'll point out is there's an office that sits at the Small Business Administration, U.S. Small Business Administration, called the Office of Advocacy. Most people have never heard of the Office of Advocacy. One of their main jobs is to interact with the other federal agencies and try to let them know what's going to help or hurt the small business community. So they're charged specifically with giving these agencies working with them on a regulatory analysis. So it's going to have a significant impact on small companies, on these small companies. And if so, how can you change the regulation, at least for small companies, so it doesn't hurt as much? How they can comply with it more effectively? Well, that office has been without a presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed head since the Obama administration. It was never one of the first-term administration. He finally did nominate somebody, but the Senate never confirmed. In the Biden administration, he never even nominated anybody for that job. And now, finally, this year, the president did nominate someone, a gentleman, Casey Mulligan, who was actually in the National Economic Council staff administration, the previous Trump administration. And it seems like a really good choice for this office. He understands what they're supposed to do. I think he's ready to do it. The Senate has confirmed him. And so I think we're going to see a lot more focus and attention on some of the more tail regulations that small businesses have to face because of it. So hopefully this will be a trend, and the next time we have a president, we'll get another nominee for that office that will be promptly confirmed like it has been this year for the first time. And as I was saying, in nearly a decade since we've seen this kind of attention to the office. So that's very positive. So maybe I will stop there a little bit early, and because there's so many things that have happened and that could happen. There's so many laws and regulations that affect so many sectors of the small business community. And I always feel a little daunted when giving over a speech, because I want to hear what you want to know about it. So I'll just stop and see what questions or illustrative comments that anyone has.
Is there a small business advocate in the SBA?
That's what I just described.
Is that who you're talking about, that position? Okay, so they finally put. Could you comment on the XM Bank? And is it authorized for a period of time?
Yeah, right now the controversy around the XM Bank, I think, is largely removed. Some of you who may do study as what we recall a few years ago. Excuse me. There was a cadre of relatively small cadre, but a small cadre of House Republicans who were frustrated with the XM Bank. They didn't think it was a useful thing for the government to be involved in. And we found that the XM Bank is really extremely useful for many small companies to do what they need. And so they kept causing that, much like the SBIR worker that I described, causing the authorization of the XM Bank to expire. And they weren't approving board members, so they wouldn't have a quorum even when they were authorized. So that bank had really been hamstrung for a long time. But I think those days have passed, and there's not that cadre anymore. I think because of just the dynamics of the Republican Party these days. The president didn't give his support for the XM Bank, so the Republican opposition that was there a few years ago has evaporated. And so I don't think for the foreseeable future we'll see those difficulties. What other questions? Nothing? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, mate, you were all the way to the back.
Well, good afternoon, Todd. I'm Jacob Manning with the Small Business Association of Michigan. We work closely on a lot of different policy issues, and we appreciate your partnership with our organization, and certainly appreciate the work that you do in DC. We do a lot of surveys of our members, and what we've been hearing a lot lately is that one of the biggest concerns small business owners are facing today are these year after year after year, sometimes double-digit increases in their health insurance premiums. So we've done a good deal of advocacy on the state level. We do a lot of work. We do a lot of work out in Lansing, and we oftentimes reach this sort of hard boundary where we'll be talking to state lawmakers who will say this is more of an issue that can be dealt with at the federal level. So from our position and from others' positions here, what sort of efforts can we be helping you with? What sort of efforts are you guys pushing that can help alleviate the drastic increases in health insurance costs for small businesses?
Well, a couple of things. I think at this point, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I've been doing this long enough to have seen sort of the arc of how this has happened over the years. I mean, we, as you may all recall, many years ago we saw even higher year-over-year increases in health insurance than we're seeing today. And it really did drive health insurance and healthcare affordability to the very top of the national agenda. And since passage of the ACA, aside from the Affordable Care Act, aside from the fighting in 2017 on whether to repeal it or not, it's really, that issue has really dropped off the federal radar. Part of that, I think, is because for a few years we weren't seeing the same level of escalation of healthcare costs. It was still going up, but not at the year-over-year double-digit rates that we were seeing for everyone back in the aughts and the 90s and the 80s, for that matter. And it was that dynamic that I think drove healthcare reform. Whether you wanted it, whether you liked what they passed or not, that was what was causing that issue to be addressed and be looked at. I think we're beginning to reach that point again. There is no significant bill or movement in Washington right now that could make a meaningful difference to healthcare costs. I'll just say that it just isn't. So our focus right now is to help build that drumbeat that this is a big issue again. People have to figure out what to do. There's some interim measures that we're looking at. I mean, for instance, one of our agenda items is aimed at the self-employed. I mean, right now, self-employed people can't deduct their health insurance costs against their self-employment taxes. So that they do both halves of the FICA tax for themselves and for the government. That's their self-employed. And they can't deduct, like every other person in the economy can take the health insurance premiums of the employer pre-tax. So you can against everything. So that would give self-employed people a 15%, an effective 15% reduction in their health insurance costs day one if they were taxed out, and just give self-employed people the same benefits, tax benefits that everyone else has. But that doesn't actually get at the underlying healthcare costs, right? That just gets at the tax treatment and the out-of-pocket expenses that small companies actually have to pay. We've really got to get into the causes. And the problem, of course, is they're manifold. Insurance companies want you to think it's all about the drug companies. Drug companies want you to think it's all about the insurance companies, and the providers and hospitals just work on with a whole number of ways to figure it out. And the politicians won't take on any of those powerful positions until the drumbeat from the American public and the small business community and the big business community, for that matter, gets loud enough again that they have to do something. And I still think we're a ways from that, unfortunately. So I don't, I'll just stop there. That's kind of where that's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
For small businesses for many, many years. I've got two questions, if that's okay. First question is, you talked about the permanence of the tax code, and how that was a surprise to you. What's the next kind of dream big for you?
Well, really dream big, I would say two things. One is to get meaningful healthcare reform that actually drives down, helps keep down healthcare costs long term. The other one is that we've lost sight of, I think, in the tax code, and that's to get real tax simplicity. I mean, so many of these provisions I described, which are great for small companies that reduces their effective taxes, for the most part, though, they all make the code more complex. The code is getting more and more complex every day, even if it's been made better for small companies than it was 10 years ago. So that would be the next big trend. And the third thing, the other issue that Washington has never found a way to really address meaningfully, that is the thing you hear from the small business community year in, year out for decades, is access to credit. The ability of small companies to raise and keep raising the money they need in good times and bad to grow and to start is just always a huge problem. We have loan programs to the SBA. They help. They're not the silver bullet. That is the problem, of course, is there are lots of little things that can help a great deal, from changing the way bank examiners work to changing the way those loan programs work, to changing the way we think about credit score for small companies as well, and lots of other things. Maybe Washington's not quite ready for that, and that would be the big thing that I think would be revolutionary.
Thank you. My last question. Considering your conversations with folks in Congress, how well received is the conversation around exemptions and tariffs for small businesses?
It's pretty well received behind closed doors. I think you find you go to Congress, it's not very often we find a member of Congress or office that doesn't agree with us on the tariffs. It's the political dynamic that actually doing something about it is the problem. So that's frustrating. But they're all looking at their primary races in 26. That's basically where we are now.
Question here.
Yes, sir.
My name is Miles, and I have a couple questions regarding resources that the Small Business Association has. So as a small business owner, what resources are currently available for them to take advantage of?
Well, most of the resources we point people to actually are the Small Business Administration in Washington. And they're the organization that has the loan programs I described before, the 7A and 4 loan programs primarily. And they also oversee the school program, which is the school program to our executives, and the small business development program that mostly runs through local universities. Some organizations like SBN and Chambers of Commerce that will have SBDCs. So I think those are those few of the programs are the pillars that provide credit capital access and the education to figure out how to start your business. Our association per se doesn't have programs like that. We are an advocacy group. So what we do is the kind of advocacy that I'm describing, trying to make sure that we understand what the needs of the small business community are, what the obstacles are facing, and we translate that back to Washington, and vice versa. So I think the primary benefit that our members get is that insight and also the information we provide about what's really going on, what they can expect. I think one of our finer moments was during the pandemic. We actually were directly involved in the creation of the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, when it happened. And so we knew better than just about anybody what was happening with that, how people could get their loans, what they should expect. And we had regular webinars to help our members and really any small company at the time navigate that, figure out what, because we were telling them things their bankers didn't even know yet. So they actually worked to the banks and saying, hey, this is what you got to do to get your money. So that's most of what we do as an organization, is sort of information policy brokers.
Makes sense. And then my follow-up question here is, what have you seen be a successful cornerstone for great small businesses? and give you like 3 examples.
Oh, there's so many things. But I really think the ability to manage risk is a huge cornerstone for small companies. People often think of small business owners as being risk takers. And yeah, there's real risk in starting a small company. But the really successful people are the ones who can figure out how to mitigate risk, how to assess risk, and it's not about charging ahead and no holds barred. Those people, sometimes they succeed. You hear about big successes like that, but the day-to-day small business people are the ones who are always assessing where the risk is and mitigating it. But there is a certain, I guess, belief in your own vision that I think is key to small business success. There's so many people that they think they've got to have some idea no one ever thought of before as part of a successful business. It's simply not true. And I think the most successful business people realize that, and they realize there's room for 4 of these companies in this town, right? I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so many people are stopped, I think, from entrepreneurship because that's what they do. So I guess those are a couple of them. I'm not sure what they do. Just many other things. Thank you. Sure, thank you.
Hi, Todd. Thank you so much for coming and sharing such deep insight with us and letting us into all that's going on. My name is Vicki Hamilton, and I'm the independent contractor helping companies with change management. My question has been touched upon a couple of times during the course of the conversation here. It specifically, I wrote it down because it was so important to me. Given the increasing volatility in trade policy and tariffs, how is the NSBA advising small businesses to navigate supply chain risk and cost shocks, particularly for those that import inputs and export goods? And I'm a little selfish in asking this question because I'm representing multiple Canadian companies right now who are trying to do business in the US, and I'm finding that very difficult.
It is difficult. I don't know. I'll be totally clear. I'm not sure I have the advice. I really don't, because the landscape changes so frequently and unpredictable. So I think you have to think about it from that perspective. I think at some point this will settle down, but it hasn't settled down so far. And so much of I think what people who are in jobs like mine do is have some experience and think where are the incentives politically for a president, for a Congress, for political parties. And in years past, you could sort of reasonably predict where things would go because water flows to the path of nature systems, right? And politics and policy is the same way. But with tariffs, I don't feel like it follows those patterns. It's become very unpredictable. That's why we came to the idea, instead of talking about as an overall problem by them individually, to call for a broad small business exemption. I really do think that could have some legs going forward because of that frustration. So yeah, that's what I would say is help us get the small business exemption, because I'm not sure there's a great answer for how to thoughtfully navigate an ever-changing discourse.
I have one briefly, and so as you are a national organization and you're the watchdog and advocacy, are you able to ever look across the nation and say, oh, here's something that's working for small business in Arizona or in Michigan, let's champion that idea and communicate it to the rest of the nation?
There are sometimes. I think we should try to get more of that, honestly. I do think there are more ideas that have been introduced before. I mean, what I think is really interesting is that we're trying to take to the national level, at least until get other states to think of adopting, is a regulatory program in Ohio where they have adopted a program to basically cut away a lot of regulations for the smallest companies. And they do it in a process that's above board and visible. It's a really interesting idea. But yeah, I think there's too much reluctance, too much from each other. So we get to do a lot more.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Thank you so much.